Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships, and it's by user Deleted, Recovered, Boy with the Iron. My 37 male wife, 36 female, is turning into an absolute hippie psycho person, and me and my son, 12 male, can't stand it anymore. A bit of backstory. I am from Puerto Rico, and my wife is from suburban Kansas City. I moved to New York City in 1984, and she moved here at 18 for college and fell in love with the city. We actually met at a bar and had a one-night stand, and she got pregnant. At first, we wanted her to terminate, but we kind of fell in love at first one-night stand and got married when our son was 3 months old. We are very, very different people. I'm from the South Bronx and grew up extremely rough. I got into fights, have gotten stabbed, gotten shot at. Not a great upbringing. I wasn't the worst kid, but my friends were truly bad people. Luckily, I mostly got out of that lifestyle by the time I met her. So basically, we've raised our son and have had our ups and downs, but we are both successful at our jobs and whatnot. But in the past year or two, her attitude towards certain things has changed. Here's just a list of what I'm talking about. She refuses to eat gluten. This should give you a staple of the stereotype she fits into now. She is now 100% vegan and gets extremely mad when we eat meat in the house. She goes to yoga 3 times a week and cries when we don't want to go with her. She suddenly doesn't like movies with violence or drugs or partying. She gets extremely protective of our son about this. She doesn't let our son hang out with his friends sometimes because the friends are too rowdy and come from uncultured families. She doesn't let our son bike around the neighborhood with his friends at all. She needs to constantly be with him when he is hanging out. She literally took his iPod and changed the music to what she considers good music. This consists of Justin Timberlake and Mumford & Sons, Macklemore and Taylor Swift type stuff mostly. Our son liked electronic dance music and metal a lot. This was one of the worst things she did in my opinion. She thinks I'm too masculine in the way I act and constantly tries to correct the way I act, saying I have toxic masculinity in me. She uses this near constantly when I tell her I don't like how she babies our son. She calls the cops on basically any crime she sees, including one time when we walked by a house party and she called the cops because underage drinking was happening and she wants to keep her community safe. One time, she also called the cops because a few Spanish teens were playing soccer in the street and she just assumed they were up to no good. That made me insanely upset. Honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This has been her complete attitude and behavior for the past 2 to 3 years, and we have gotten into near constant arguments about this. I tell her she is too sensitive about nearly everything, and then she goes off on rants and tries to show me all these weird articles about how what I am doing is gaslighting her. She also is trying really hard to act young. Like, she goes to indie shows in Williamsburg filled with 22-year-old hipsters and tries to chat people up to make friends. Then, when she gets rejected or something like that from those indie circles, she comes home and cries in my arms and is depressed for days. She wants so badly to be a part of that crowd. She seems to have anxiety and depression issues. I do honestly feel bad for her. She keeps up this insane persona. She describes herself as a modern-day hippie and spends all her time checking out new cafes and brunch spots with her friends. I know how this started. She got a job at this new office filled with young yuppies. Basically, right after that, she changed into this, I think to keep up with her coworkers, but it clearly turned into something much more devastating and self-esteem damaging than that. I just want her to be herself, not this crazy person trying to perfect everything around her to fit her worldview. Interestingly enough, if you have ever seen Season 3 Episode 1 of Black Mirror, she reminds me insanely of the main character of that episode, but more willing to disrupt everything around her to fit what she wants, even if it inconveniences others. But this is all recent. She was never like this 4 years ago. She was just a regular working woman who liked to relax and hang out and didn't take much seriously as she does now. We used to get drunk at dive bars together. We used to party a bit even. It all hit a bad point about a week ago when my son, who also has been in conflict with her nearly constantly, got into a major argument with her. The argument was about whether he can hang out with his friends who were outside, and she said no because there were too many of them and she thought it was really bad to hang out in such large groups. This is the type of crap she thinks about. I know she really didn't want him to go out there because the kids were mostly black and Latino. But he is half Puerto Rican. He got so mad he took dishes and began shattering them on the ground. Then he left and didn't come back for 5 hours while my wife hysterically cried and called the cops to find him. Since then, he is not allowed to leave the house and my wife has cried nightly for losing our son. She has become extra horrible towards me and my son. She thinks I am on his side simply because I tried to defend him and say she was overreacting. But every time I say she is overreacting, she has a breakdown and says I'm just doing what men do to women. I don't even know what to do anymore. I know that this isn't her. I know that she has developed some serious mental problems in the past 2 to 3 years. I know this isn't normal for her. I don't want to divorce her, but I'm not sure if I can handle this any longer. She has broken down. She is in bed crying nearly all day. She will sometimes go off yelling at me that I am the epitome of toxic masculinity, and then an hour later be crying in my arms saying she loves me more than anything. Is this some type of personality disorder? Does she need therapy? What can I say to make her calm down? I was thinking about writing a heartfelt letter about the way she has been acting. That way, she can't interrupt me like she usually does with the screaming and accusations of gaslighting and toxicity. I don't want to argue, I just want to make my point and have her respond, but I don't want to seem as if I disapprove of her entire lifestyle and everything she has done. What the hell do? I feel so passive in this situation, and she goes nuts when she sees me acting completely normal while she is crying or yelling or whatnot. As if every time she is acting crazy, I have to act crazy too about whatever she is crazy about at that moment. What the F do? I do not want a divorce. I want to help her. We both still very much love each other despite this madness. Wow, OP, it sounds like your wife is going through a lot. Based on everything you've said, I would think that she is having some sort of mental issues. Maybe she's going through an early midlife crisis, considering she's 36. I'm totally behind being able to change your mind or even acquiring new traits and stuff, considering the people you meet and the type of life that you've been living. But some of the things she's done, particularly with your son, are way out there. Like changing his music because it's mother-approved music or something like that. And also the racism. I mean, come on, that's very blunt and right there. Honestly, I do not have any hipster or yuppie friends, so I've got no idea what type of social circle that is, but if everything has to be cool for hipsters and stuff, then maybe her whole insecurity issues come from wanting to be accepted by this crowd who doesn't accept anyone because everything is ironic or something like that. I honestly don't get it. And if that's the type of environment that she's been a part of for the better part of 2 years, it sounds incredibly toxic and also can drive you through a really crazy rabbit hole if you're insecure. The part that I'm stumped is, would she want to listen to any of this? OP, I think what you do need to do is talk to her, and if she doesn't want to talk or just starts screaming, then write her a letter and tell her that her behavior is hurting your relationship and the future of your relationship surviving. I hate that I'm even suggesting this type of ultimatum, but at this point, you're kind of between a rock and a precipice. Now, I could have gone longer analyzing this whole thing because there is so much here, but I think I've spoken long enough already in my commentary. So let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they had to say. Deleted says, let me share something with you. As an ex-vegan, her emotional distress could very well be due to a vitamin D and or vitamin 12 deficiency. I know, it sounds crazy, but that crap is real and it makes you a depressed, weeping wacko. Vegans usually don't get enough vitamin D or B12 through their diet, and both should be supplemented. This is scientifically documented. Is she taking B12 supplements? Her other crazy behaviors are more likely related to depression and a sudden feeling like she has no identity. She really could benefit from some therapy or at least some parenting classes to help her find tools to connect back with your son without damaging the relationship. Personally, I think she sounds too controlling over him, but a lot of parents start this kind of behavior when they suddenly realize their kids are independent. First, tell your wife she needs to be taking B12 supplements at the very least, and ideally vitamin D too. See if that helps mellow out her moods. I was shocked at what a difference it made in mine. Kitty Kitty Meow Meow says, God almighty man, I am so sorry for you. You need to give her an ultimatum, and I usually think that's a bad idea. Of couples and individual therapy, you may have to start with couples, or you find a divorce lawyer. This is seriously stunting your poor son. Never mind yourself. Now's the time to be a good father and intervene in a way that helps your son to live a normal life. And Opie responds, I am thinking about this, but I have mentioned therapy before and she accused me of gaslighting her and got even sadder. I am going to make a true heartfelt request that we both go to therapy. I don't feel as if I need it for myself, but I know she will feel better if I act as if we both need it. Selene says, therapy, 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 therapy. Individual for each of you, including your son, couples, and family therapy too. Seriously, this is way too much for Reddit, and please don't take this the wrong way. While you do make some great points about things that she's saying or doing that sound like real severe problems, it does sound like you have some problems yourself that need to be addressed and could be contributing to what is going on with her. Please note that I am not saying that this is your fault or that the things she's doing are okay, reasonable, and understandable, but some of what you write is concerning and seems to indicate that some of your beliefs or the way you handle things are contributing to the problems your wife is having. If divorce is really off the table and you want your wife to change, then change is going to be required from you too. Additional information from OP's comments. She does not have gluten sensitivity, she just doesn't eat it. It's a big trend here in Brooklyn to not have gluten in anything, and all of her friends follow it, and she just kind of does it too. She thinks it's bad for you. I have no problem with the yoga, the gluten issue, the kale smoothies, the veganism. Just don't shove it down our throats and get mad at us and accuse us of having toxic masculinity. I can't express how much she uses this term to insult me when we don't want it. Her accusing me of gaslighting is so frustrating. She constantly acts as if everything I do is based around the fact that I am a man, and that gaslighting is something men do to women. But in a way she is gaslighting me just by saying that. Specifically, I am a stoic person and she despises that part of me, I think. Saying I tell her she is too sensitive about nearly everything is definitely an overstatement. I meant it more like I have told her that before in heated arguments, not like I'm condescendingly telling her she's too sensitive when she screams in a horror movie or something like that. She gets furious when I say she is sensitive, but what am I supposed to do when she is literally being extremely sensitive to the point where she will go into hysterics over small things? What am I supposed to say when she is screaming at me for eating meat in the house, or when she is changing the music on my son's iPod because it's too dark and scary, or when she comes home and demands I go to yoga and when I say I don't want to, she starts crying and screaming at me that I'm not willing to express myself around her? What do I say? Feeling like she has no identity is the perfect way to describe it. She came to New York City a totally normal girl into a city of extremely interesting people, and I think when she came face to face with that side of the city at her new job, she just became overwhelmed with jealousy of that lifestyle. It's almost like if she can't be the perfect modern woman, as someone else who commented described it, she can't be anything. I am definitely going to ask her about the B12 thing. That could easily be a solution, but it's not going to solve her ongoing issues. She only became a vegan like 6 months ago. These issues have been going on for years now. Her issues with our son's friends goes deeper than race. For example, if a bunch of white trash kids came, she wouldn't want him hanging out with them either. It's more she doesn't want him hanging out with kids that she doesn't approve of. Basically, any kid that doesn't come from the hipster yuppie culture she admires so much. She despised my son's friend Mikey, and he was Italian, but he had a thick Brooklyn accent and talked in slang, and she hated that. But the fact that she sees black and Latino kids and right away assumes they're up to no good is definitely racist. However, not the type you're thinking of. If a black kid came over looking like a Childish Gambino or whatever that nerdy rapper's name is, she would love it. She just wants my son to hang out with a very specific type of people, white or not. This is not normal concerning behavior. This feels unnatural, like it's not how a human reacts to things. I can't just let these things slide, and 99% of the time she is looking to argue with me about these things. We don't argue about this all the time, but we have had this argument quite a few times before, and yes, I have called her sensitive, but I don't do it for every little thing. Typically, I just take whatever she dishes out at me and I don't even say that much back, but then that gets her even madder sometimes. That being said, I do not try and trivialize her, but I have to do something when she is literally going through my son's iPod, deleting the music he loves and replacing it. That is sick behavior. I told her that that was effed up beyond belief, and she basically told me I don't care about how my son is raised, and she went off telling me about how influential music is in someone's childhood. She must follow about 40 different blogs. I don't read them, but from what I've seen, it's a lot of this self-help 7 ways to be a better you type stuff. I thought about the idea of a midlife crisis, and she definitely has some of the attributes. But this has been going on and getting worse for years upon years now, ever since she got that new job. She has a lot of progressive friends that I think have helped change her view on what men should be. And when she looks at me, I feel like she looks down on me, as if I just am not emotional enough, like I'm some archaic stereotypical version of a man from the 1950s. Now, I consider myself somewhat progressive, but I'm not extreme. I'm just a regular guy. I don't know what she wants from me. Does she want me to go get a pedicure with her just to prove I'm not obsessed with my masculinity? It's all so confusing. We still love each other, but sometimes I think she wishes she could change me. Okay, well, the community definitely gave OP a lot of advice pertaining to many different angles of his story, and he gave us a lot of context as to how their relationship works. So now, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Figured I would update this with all the craziness that has happened. So, the other day my wife had an absolute breakdown at both me and my son, and she basically ran away and got wasted at a bar, then came back and threatened to end herself with pills. I called the police, and by the time they came, she was just crying on the couch and the cops left. Didn't really know what to do. My son was crying and everything. I told her she has to go to a mental hospital or see a doctor as soon as possible. And she then got even madder at me, and she went upstairs and just started screaming like an insane person. She did end up going to the doctor, who diagnosed her with B12 deficiency at a severe level, just like you guys said. She has been taking pills, and I can't even describe what has changed in her. She went from an absolute downward spiral into madness and controlling everything to a just much more clear-minded and calm person. She sometimes feels weird about admitting just how wrong she was about certain things, and she said she never realized how blind she was about how horrible she was treating the people around her. She said her anxiety over things would sometimes spike through the roof, and she over-relied on blogs she read on the internet to help control her life. I'm glad she has been able to admit these things. I honestly feel like some of it wasn't entirely B12 deficiency though, or at least she might be retracting a lot of the stuff she did and said which had nothing to do with a deficiency. Like, her going vegan was a symptom of the original problem, not like veganism is bad, that she was desperate to fit in with the young yuppie crowd. I'm not sure if she is purposely blaming all of her old weird problems on the B12 deficiency, but that weird stuff started before she went vegan, so I think there were still some insecurity problems there. I'm just glad she has spent the last 2 weeks realizing how problematic she has been. She said she was like in a trance where she thought the entire world was against her. And the things she read on the internet confirmed that there was some global conspiracy, as she describes it, to make her be a dependent person or some crap like that. I am just so glad she is back. So glad. Thank you all for your comments, even the ones accusing me of being a bad husband and taking my wife's side on all the issues she was trying to control us with. I'm just happy she's on her way back from wherever she was, and my son and I will support her in all we can. Alright, OP. Well, I'm gonna count this as a win, even though you guys aren't out of the woods yet, and like you say, maybe a lot of the things were from before, from insecurity, but the B12 deficiency really amplified that. So whatever she's blaming on the B12 deficiency or not, I think it really doesn't matter at this point. Just try to help her the best you can and support her. Thank you, OP, for sharing, and all the best in the future. Take care. And now, let's move on to the next post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user I am a simp for Obi-Wan, aren't we all? The city wanted me to take better care of my gardens, so I had them approved by the local Nature Conservation Association. My house is surrounded by 2 gardens, one in the front facing the street and one in the back bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up with the garden, planting, weeding, and keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather died in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, circa 2005, my mom read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilac, rhododendron, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and me so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she dies. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the garden. I like them in their wild shape, with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn, we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sends my cats into a panic. Then, recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our gardens was interfering with the safety of the street because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way, and while the berries are poisonous, to get to them you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be the ideal food for some local birds. So, I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them more nature-friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our gardens as especially nature-friendly, and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature. And since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. Nicely done, OP. You got the city off your back and you get to keep your garden as is, friendly to nature. Thanks so much for sharing, OP, and all the best. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I really did enjoy reading them to you. So if you did, then don't be shy and go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe or even share this video with people that you might think will enjoy my storytelling. Also, if you have the time, go down to the video description and check out all the links I have for you, from our Discord community to my channel merch. And finally, I'd like to say thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me that you enjoy my videos. And having said all that, I'll see you guys in the next video.